Refuge Church. It's delightful to be with you guys. Once again, I've been out sick with absolutely no voice. And so I hope that you had a wonderful Holy Week and Easter in my absence. But here we are in the springtime. We're kicking off a new series on women in the scrolls or books of Joshua and Judges. I'm pretty excited to get into this. We have a big section of text to read together, so I'm going to pray and kick us off. God, I thank you that we have these stories to return to, that there is goodness and life and richness to be found in each chapter of your word. And I pray that you would illuminate this chapter for us today, that the story would bring us life, that we'd be challenged in the ways we need to be challenged, that different parts of our soul that we've locked away might get unlocked as we listen to the way that your Spirit is ministering to us. I pray that I would be a helpful vessel for that work, that you would consent to use me to bless your people. And so I ask that your will would be done during this meditation on your word that we have to undertake this morning or whenever folks are listening. I pray all these things in the name of your son, Jesus. Amen. All right, let's jump into it. We've got Joshua 2 and then 6 to talk about this story. This is not my translation, just putting out there. Then Yehoshua, the son of Nun, secretly sent 2 men from the acacia grove as spies, saying, "Go view the land, especially Jericho." So they went and they entered the house of a prostitute whose name was Rahab, and they spent the night there. The king of Jericho was told, "Look, some men from the Israelites have come here tonight to search out the land." And the king of Jericho sent for Rahab, saying, "Bring out the men who came to you, the ones who entered your house, for they have come to search out the whole land." But the woman took the 2 men and hid them. And she said, "Yes, the men came to me, but I did not know where they were from. And it was time to shut the gate for the night. The men left, and I do not know where they went. Chase after them quickly, for you may catch up with them." But she had taken them to the roof and had hidden them in the stalks of flax that she had spread out on the roof. So the men chased after them all the way to the Yarden at the fords, and they shut the gate behind the pursuers that had gone out after them. Before they went to sleep, she came up to them on the roof and said to the men, "I know that Yahweh has given you the land, and that the dread of you has fallen upon us, and all the inhabitants of the land melt away in fear." Excuse me, because of their presence. Moreover, we have heard how Yahweh dried up the waters of the Red Sea before you when you went out from Egypt, and what you did to the 2 kings of the Amorites that were beyond the Jordan, Sihon and Og, whom you utterly destroyed. We heard this, and our hearts melted, and we had no courage left in anyone because of your presence. For Yahweh your God is God in the heavens above and on the earth below. So then, please swear to me by Yahweh, because I have shown compassion to you, and you will also show compassion to my family. You must give me a sign of faithfulness, and you will spare my father and mother, my brothers and sisters, and all that belongs to them. You will deliver our lives from death. And the men said to her, "Our lives for yours. If you do not report this business of ours, we will show you compassion and faithfulness when Yahweh gives us the land." Then she lowered them with a rope through the window, as her house was on the outer side of the wall, and she was residing in the wall. She said to them, "Go to the mountains so that the pursuers will not find you, and hide yourselves there 3 days until the pursuers return, and afterward you may go on your way." The men said to her, "We will be released from this oath of yours that you made us swear. When we come to the land, you must tie the scarlet cord in the window through which you let us down, and you must gather your father and mother and your brothers and your whole family to your house. If anyone goes outside the doors of your house, they will be responsible for their own death, and we will be innocent. Anyone who will be with you in the house, we will be responsible for their death if a hand is laid upon them. And if you report this business of ours, we will be released from your oath that you made us swear." She said, "According to your word, it shall be." Then she sent them away, and they went and she tied the scarlet cord in the window. Jumping over to chapter 6, the word says, "They utterly destroyed by the edge of the sword all who were in the city, both men and women, young and old, ox, sheep, and donkey. Then Yehoshua said to the 2 men who spied on the land, "Go to the prostitute's house and bring out from there the woman and all who belong to her, just as you swore to her." So the young men who were spies went and brought Rahab and her father and her mother and her brothers and all who were with her. They brought all her family out and set them outside the camp of Israel. They burned the city and all that was in it with fire. They put only the silver and gold and the items of copper and iron into the treasury of the house of Yahweh. But Yehoshua spared Rahab the prostitute and her family and all who were with her, and she has lived in the midst of Israel until this day, because she hid the messengers whom Yehoshua sent to spy out Jericho. Okay, what a story. Maybe really familiar to some of us who grew up in the church. Maybe it was in our book of Bible stories, and maybe we haven't heard of this because it's a story of a woman who's a sex worker, and people don't often preach on either of those topics, right? So either way, we can choose a whole bunch of lenses to look at this story with. So what kind of story is it? Well, number one, it's a story of an underdog. The rabbinics say that she was an innkeeper, which is kind of typical of the rabbinic community to try to dial back some of the scandal from the text. But they also say that she was 50 years old, which is cool because it's not how she's typically portrayed in paintings and etc. They speculate that she knew lots of things, that she was very well connected because of all the powerful men who came to visit her. And yet societally, she was still very much the outsider. According to that list in her family, she's single and she doesn't have any kids, which is a big deal in that era. She also lives literally in the margins, literally in the boundaries. Jericho is one of the oldest cities in the world, and it is the oldest city with a defensive wall. And that defensive wall is a casemate wall, and the text lines up with the archaeological record there, in which it says that she lived in the wall. So with a casemate wall system, the upper class lived inside the city, the middle class lived in apartments inside the wall, so that if a siege came, the middle class could also cram themselves into the city, and then they'd fill the wall with rocks and dirt and all sorts of sand and stuff to make these walls triple their size and therefore triple their defensive power and impact. The lower class, of course, lives outside the wall. And sometimes they get in and sometimes they don't get in under siege. And so she lives in this space really closely, both with the upper class and with the lower class. She literally lives in the boundaries, in the in-between space. And if you're familiar with the stories in the Bible, God loves to choose people who occupy those in-between spaces, who have been pushed to the margins rather, and who are underdogs and unexpected heroes. So this very much fits who God is and who his character is, of the people that he loves to partner with tend to be these kinds of people, which can be really hopeful for those of us who don't live at the center of power, right? Always a subversive story. So this is an underdog story, but this is also an important theological story. Rahab is the story of one of the first converts from Gentile status to belonging to the people of God. It's very cool. It wasn't just an innovation of Jesus ex nihilo. We have people throughout the story who join with the family of God. But we also have theology about that. We have it in the prophets. We have it in texts like this. One important spot in Jeremiah, for instance, says, "O Lord, my strength and my stronghold, my refuge in a day of trouble. To you, the nations," so the Gentiles, the Goyim, would come from the ends of the earth. So the idea is when God does these incredible miracles, Gentiles also come in and join the family of God, which may put an additional spin on the reason that Jesus did so many miracles while he was walking around the planet. But back to Rahab, she is brought into the family of God despite her outsider status, despite her morally sketchy occupation, despite the fact that she's a single woman. She is still brought in, despite all of that in her bloodline, into the family of God. So she is our spiritual mother, this first outsider to join in. Thirdly, I don't want us to miss the third way to look at this story. It's an underdog story. It's a theological story, but it's also potentially a bit of a comedy. If we take off our lullaby effect glasses from Sunday school and look at this story again, at the very beginning, Yehoshua, this big leader, right? Moshe has died. His number one from the very beginning, or maybe number two if you count Aaron, is Yehoshua. He's attended him. He's stayed in the tent, worshiping God 24/7. This guy now emerges as the leader of Israel, and he gathers these spies together, and he says, go, search out all the land, especially Jericho. In the very next sentence, the very next thing the spies do is go to a brothel. They've been released from the community of God's people, and that's the first place that they scurry off to. Now, this was potentially an okay strategic choice as kind of a local watering hole, right? If they're trying to find information and be kind of staying out of the spotlight, I can imagine that being an okay place to go. But it still doesn't take away from the comedy of that opening, that probably would have stood out more to people who were reading it for the first time. Second off, once they scurry off, rubbing their hands together deviously, the first person they run into in their potentially mischievous little mission here is a prostitute who knows about Yahweh and has heard all these rumors about everything he's been up to, which is also has an ironic, comedic angle to it. This is like if you're going to a drug dealer for the first time and they look at you and they slide you a gospel tract and say, here, you need this more than I do, right? This is unexpected in the furthest place in the world that they would expect to find somebody who has this incredible confession of who Yahweh is. The Jews count it as a better confession than Naaman the Syrian general, one of the other Gentile to Jewish converts. She says that he is Yahweh, the God of the heavens and the earth. And she even quotes Miriam's song from Exodus. So she's heard a lot. She's done her research here. Yahweh, your God, is God of heavens above and on the earth below. She's heard some things, right? And how unexpected for them if you put this in a cinematic lens or some other that enables you to see more comedy in the Bible despite the language. It's pretty fun. But fourthly, and very importantly, I don't want to say most importantly, because the theological angle is important too. This is a story of courageous hospitality. One might call it, as a civil rights icon John Lewis called it, good trouble. It's a story of courageous hospitality and good trouble. Despite being from the outside and not having a lot of power, or maybe because of that fact, when the king, pretty big deal, king of this city-state, comes to Rahab and tells her to turn them over, she leaves that scene, goes and hides them on the roof, then comes back downstairs, which I want to know how that works, and says, actually, they left already, which is incredibly gutsy, whether this is her inn or her brothel or she just is here, right? There's a total potential for the king to send troops to tear her place upside down, find the spies, torch the place, kill her, right? The possibilities for risk here are really great. She's overcoming the lots of ties to comfort and convenience, right? These spies don't owe her anything, or she doesn't owe them anything, right? And yet she chooses, perhaps because of her station, to take in others who have been ostracized by society. I would hope that we would have a fourth of this kind of courage to protect those in need around us. But what's the through line, right? If we've got these four different lenses, how do we bring them all together? What's the line that runs through every single one? So there's this comedic tale of a courageous underdog outsider who steps out in faith in order to join with God's people. I'm going to say that this is our through line here. She has only heard a rumor about who Yahweh is, and there are probably very fearful whispers, right? She alludes to that in her big monologue. She says that everyone is in trembling based on what they've heard about this God, and she is willing to completely change the trajectory of her life, her livelihood, and that of her family based on these rumors that she's heard. She has heard kind of, frankly, bad things, not things about how generous and kind and loving and graceful God is. She's heard about how terrible God is in the original sense of the word. And she chooses belief and intellectual assent and faith. All of this is very anti-American, right? If this was an American movie about an alien invasion, she would be the bad guy, the antagonist who hides the aliens at her house and doesn't tell anybody that they've landed there and that they're going to kill everyone. We would expect and hope for her as a heroine to stab the spies in the night, right? They've come for her people. And yet she doesn't show loyalty to her tribe and her people. She hears these challenging things about God, and she chooses to want to join with him based again on these rumors. She takes the leap to trust as well that these people won't backstab her, that these spies won't backstab her. And she realigns her destiny with theirs. For some of us, trusting the people would be the bigger thing, right? Maybe we're searching for gods and we're doing lots of religious research on world religions and history or whatever. But imagining trusting another group of people in a faith community not to hurt us and to accept us even though we're the outsider would be the most challenging thing to overcome. Perhaps it is for this incredible reason that the New Testament twice lauds her specifically for her faith. I will read those sections. Hebrews 11:31 says, "By faith, Rahab the prostitute did not perish with those who did not believe, because she welcomed the spies in peace." James 2:25 says, "Likewise, was not Rahab the prostitute also justified by works when she welcomed the messengers and sent them out by a different route? For just as the body without the spirit is dead, so also faith without works is dead." So the New Testament underlines this fact that she chooses to do things in faith, right? So this intellectual assent piece that we can be kind of uncomfortable with sometimes in our community, but then also underlines the fact that she did do the right thing. Those things don't have to be in tension against one another. It's not like choose to believe or choose to be a good person or whatever. Those things are opposites. The New Testament underlines that she does both of these things. There's a saying in Judaism that says that those who draw close to God merit being drawn closer by God. I'll read that again. Those who draw close to God merit being drawn closer by God. We have a similar tradition in Christianity, though the way we phrase it and frame it might be a little bit different, away from merit. But we have the teachings of Jesus in Matthew 7 say, "Ask and it will be given to you, seek and you will find, knock and the door will be open to you." Hebrews 11 says, "Whoever would draw near to God must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who seek him." That can be a big ask for some of us who have gone through deconstruction or are going through deconstruction. When we focus so much on doing the right thing and embodying the walk of Jesus and putting our values on display and seeking justice and equity and all the things that we care about, we can forget that belief is also important. If she had not believed those rumors, she might not have done the right thing. These things go together. Again, whoever would draw near to God, a relational thing, must believe that he exists. I cannot have a relationship with my husband if I don't believe he exists, right? And that he rewards those who seek him, right? Some of us, again, American culture, we like exchanges that don't have any ties. We want to keep everything loosey-goosey. We want to say, thanks for bringing me dinner. And we don't want anything to be attached to that. That's not the culture of the rest of the world, in which the expectation is, you've given this to me. We now have a tie between us. And so that colors this picture that he rewards those who seek him. That can make us uncomfortable, but it's there in the text, and it can be an amazing promise to trust in if we haven't been seeking God and we haven't been listening to those rumors on the horizon about who God might be, and we've just been cruising along doing the right thing, right? Taking in the spies, but not believing anything about Yahweh. Isaiah 55 puts it this way: everyone who is thirsty, come to the waters. Whoever has no money, come buy and eat. Come buy without money, wine and milk without price. Why do you weigh out money for what is not food, and your labor for what cannot satisfy? Listen carefully to me and eat what is good. Let your soul take pleasure in rich food. Extend your ear and come to me. Listen so that your soul may live. And it says, seek Yahweh while he lets himself be found, and call him while he is near. All of those things which end in lovely things, right? Getting to eat and drink, taking pleasure in what is good. All of that requires belief before we show up. Otherwise, we'll never go. And we'll spend the rest of our faith walk living on the edges, living on the margins, living like we're orphans, saying, yeah, maybe God's there, maybe he's good. I don't know. I don't really want to be associated with those wild Christians over there. They seem kind of crazy. They don't really have all their ducks in the row like I do. And so we stay away from intellectual assent. We stay away from faith or belief, and we just try to grip tightly enough to doing the right thing and being kind and standing up for those marginalized, because we know that's the right thing to do, but we're not willing to step into intellectual assent. Doing the right thing is great, by the way. Just like the book of James says, those who are not participating in works are still dead. But if Rahab hadn't had the belief that God was real, she still would have died with everybody else, right? She would have hid the spies and then said, go your merry way. Because the king of Jericho is gone. And that would not have ended well for her. She would have missed out on a new community and life as part of the family of God. But she also wouldn't have lived at all. So she made a choice to believe, based on rumors that she had heard, that God was on the horizon and coming to her community. She made an intellectual choice to believe that God would take her in, and to say that she wanted to even make that leap at all. She probably had questions, right? Some of us are trying to answer all of our questions. Well, why did that happen? Or why did God allow this? Or how could this church be this crazy if God is still good, right? She probably had lots of questions too. She probably didn't have a full systematic theology about who God was. And yet, she chose to take the opportunity to seek Yahweh when he might be found anyway. So may we possess the same courage, even in the wake of our own uncertainty. So I will pray. God, King of the universe, we come to you and we might feel like we do have all the answers and we do know all the things. Maybe we know everything about church history. Maybe we know everything about theology or atonement or whatever, and we feel secure. And yet, we might not have that relationality of experiencing you while you are near, that we don't feel like we have drawn near to you. If that's the spot that we are in, I pray that you would move in us and heal what needs to be healed, and grant us courage and the ability to step forward and invest time out of the crazy regular pattern of life to create room for a relationship with you, that we might draw near to you. maybe we're not that person at all, and maybe we're a person who feels like they don't know anything, and we have questions about what happened to us and our trauma, and our theology feels like it's totally changed upside down, and we don't know what to call you, or where is our head and where is our tail. I pray even in that space that we would sense your spirit, that we would sense that it's life-giving to decide to believe something. Even when we don't have all the data in front of us, I pray that you would give us that faith to choose to believe, and trust that all of those answers and everything else will come into alignment with time. But we don't want to miss out on finding you while you may be found. We want to experience life in you. We don't want to be cut off from that and drift in the wake forever. We want to be on the ship with you, living our life with fullness of joy. We don't want to just do the right thing, gripping on to doing that without your help. We want to feel your partnership with us. So I pray that you would come alongside us, that you would give us the gift of faith that we need, that you would stop us in our tracks and reorient us if we have gone far from this idea. Pray that you would be with us and minister to us in your humility and your kindness and your mercy and your love. I pray that we would be open to that and that we would say yes to that. I pray all these things in your name, Jesus. Amen. Okay. If you haven't joined us before and you live in the Palouse area, come join us. We'd love to see you. We're at our top in Pullman. If you aren't in our area, you're welcome to fill out a form on refugepullman.com and hang out with us on Zoom. If you regularly hang out on this YouTube channel and enjoy listening to these sermons, whether you're part of our online community or not, we would sure appreciate it if you tithe. There's a give tab at refugepullman.com. We would love that support, and enables this to keep happening. So if we've blessed you, we would certainly appreciate if you blessed us as well. Have a wonderful rest of your week. God be with you. Bye.